Hello and welcome to Uninterrupted, the EnSmart Power podcast. In this episode, we have EnSmart Power CEO Professor Robert Hamilton, and he welcomes Austin Motor Company Chairman and CEO Nigel Stewart. Let's get into the conversation right now. Take it away, guys.
Actually, some background about you would be amazing. So tell us what you've been doing for the last, 10, 20 years.
Okay, well, my name is Nigel Stewart. I'm currently the chairman and CEO of Austin Motor Company. I've had about 40 odd years working in the automotive industry. Started out working with BMW initially, running dealerships for BMW. And then I went on to run what was called Portman Lamborghini, which was the UK importer of Lamborghini. And while I was there, it was around about the time when McLaren was developing the McLaren F1. And I ended up moving on to work for McLaren as their director of sales and marketing, and was responsible for selling the McLaren F1. And from there, I was recruited to go and be sales and marketing director of Lamborghini over in Italy. And also, I was vice president of Lamborghini USA. I've also worked with Group Lotus as group commercial director. I've worked with Pagani, worked with Koenigsegg, and a number of other companies as well as a kind of special advisor. As you can tell, my experience is relatively niche market, and really kind of focused on what customers are looking for these days, and especially within niche markets, it's such a customer-centric market in terms of developing product. Like the car that you drive has been developed very specifically for a particular type of customer that wants to create a sort of impression, and that's the same thing that we're doing with Austin. But what's really interesting is it applies now very strongly because of this sort of transfer over to electrification from internal combustion engine, and everyone's a bit confused about where we're going with that and what the future potentially holds for transportation, which is how I got involved with you and what led me to this conversation that's taking place now.
I think that's quite a strong portfolio. I'm very impressed. So do we get any discounts?
No.
Fantastic. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is Austin. Why Austin?
Austin was a company I was contacted and asked if I'd get involved with it, and I think you were involved in it before I was. And you knew the chap that had acquired the brand. The brand actually sort of disappeared around about the mid-90s originally, and it was retired because of the fact that within what was the Austin Rover Group, or before that British Leyland, they had overlapping brands in terms of particular market sectors. And Rover and Austin, as kind of junior luxury brands, were overlapping each other. And they decided to go with the Rover brand rather than the Austin brand. So it was actually Austin Rover Group, ARG as it was at the time. And then it was transferred and became MG Rover Group. And then MG Rover, I think, were owned by BMW. They sold it on to a group called the Phoenix Consortium, who ran it for a while. And then the company got into trouble, and it was bought out by a Chinese group, a combination of Nanjing Auto and SAIC. And they acquired all the various different brands during the acquisition. But for whatever reason, they didn't hold on to the Austin brand. And we managed to acquire it about 10 years ago.
I know, and it's very strange because I think from my point of view, Austin has always been a top brand. I mean, if I remember, the Metro sold in the millions.
Well, certainly the Mini, which was the first product that was really produced, it was called the Super 7 originally. And it actually just kind of rewrote the rules, really, in terms of the automotive industry, because they came up with a product which hit a market at a particular time during the petrol crisis, late 50s, early 60s, where actually, that whole kind of movement away from big lumpy cars towards something much more sort of urban or whatever really started.
And that was sustainable.
Yeah, and so the sustainability side of things was very much in there, and if you look at some of the original interviews with people like Ale Kisigonis, who designed the car in the first place, the Mini or the Super 7, it was designed very much with sustainability in mind and very, very frugal fuel consumption.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you is how does the joint venture with EnSmart influence your approach to customer experience and service for EV users?
That's beautifully written, dear boy. It's kind of interesting because the industry at the moment, I keep on saying to people that all the OEMs, all the major car manufacturers have set up new departments. Everyone has got a new department, and it's called the crystal ball department. And they're all kind of sitting around a table with the lights off. looking at a big ball of crystal, trying to work out what happens next. And, the Chinese have kind of pushed very aggressively into the electrification market. So a lot of the European OEMs are playing catch up, and they're kind of struggling with that. So, Austin had to make a decision which direction it was going to take, and it chose, obviously, fairly sensibly to move into the direction of electrification. The issue that tends to be wafted around a lot is infrastructure when it comes to electrification. And we thought the very sensible thing to do would be to work with a company that is really leading that infrastructure aspect of the market, both from a hardware and software sort of perspective. And EnSmart was very much the obvious company for us to form an association with. So when we are talking to customers about cars, and whether it's the little Arrow that we've just recently launched, or actually the much more contemporary products which are coming down the pipe, obviously our recommendation for an association with an energy provider, and from a hardware perspective, is a very logical thing to do. Hence the reason for the conversation with EnSmart.
Fantastic. So, can you discuss any upcoming models that will incorporate let's say the latest in technology from EnSmart, for example? I notice you're involved in the low EV program.
Yeah, I mean, we have two divisions of the company that we're working on at the moment. One is our heritage division, which the Arrow kind of is really the kind of forerunner of that. The intention was to kind of reintroduce the Austin brand with the product that made it most famous. It was kind of like a greatest hits of Austin, if you can imagine. So the first car, obviously, being the Arrow. It's a bit like the Austin 7. That car was tremendously successful during the early 19th, early 20th century, and sold in vast numbers. Moving on from there, but we're also looking at contemporary product, and that is vehicles in key sectors, what they call the C segment, which is basically a small family car, D segment, which is a larger family car, and the EF segment, which is luxury family cars. And we are looking at those segments. We're having conversations with various different companies in respect of that. And actually, on the basis that we're doing that, it puts us up as competitors with companies like BYD, it puts us as competitors with companies like MG, or even actually Audi or Mercedes. So being able to actually then put forward a relationship with a company such as EnSmart makes perfect sense. As far as LOEV is concerned, that is down at the other end of the market. It's the affordability side of things. It's the ability to be able to buy a car in a similar way, or own a car in a similar way to how you own a mobile phone.
So going on to that tie-up, so how does Austin Motor Company, let's call it AMC, but Austin Motor Company and low EV, plan to address the challenges of charging accessibility and reliability across various regions?
Again, it's one of the things that we kind of struggle a little bit with in the industry, is the fact that we're producing a product which to a certain extent is becoming more of a commodity rather than a luxury. The luxury of being able to have something to drive around in and to enjoy the process and the experience of driving seems to be diminishing as time goes on. And fewer people are getting that experience. They just regard a vehicle to get them from A to B as nothing more than a commodity. And because of that, we thought, well, hang on a second, how can we make that an enjoyable process? How can we make that an enjoyable experience? How can we help the consumer achieve their personal transport needs as simply and easily and cost effectively as possible? And we likened it really to the idea of going into Vodafone or O2 or whatever and getting a mobile phone and signing an airtime agreement.
So almost like a mobile contract for the masses.
Exactly, like an airtime agreement, and effectively sign that. You choose the car that you want, and effectively you use that car to get you from A to B. Because what we're not talking about is a luxurious form of transportation. This is relatively functional, even though it has a number of kind of luxury features in terms of heating and ventilation and air conditioning and music and all the kinds of things that we've come to expect from a car, as well as the safety aspect and what have you. But the key thing is really having the right tool for the job. If you live in a city, or you live on the outskirts of a city, and you travel into the city or into somewhere like a hospital, which is one of the ways we first started talking about this. If you travel into that hospital and you have a charging facility capability within that location where you work, It makes life tremendously easy. If you're able to then go to that place and say, right, we can store energy for you and then make it available to your workers when they come into work, and you're able to do it in a very cost-effective way, then it's even better. What you're now providing is something that is as simple as an airtime agreement with a mobile phone.
I mean, what I also was obviously enthused about today, and talking to some of the guys at Low EV, of course yourself, how does, let's say, Austin approach innovation in EV technology to stay ahead in a rapidly evolving industry? For example, I noticed on the infrastructure side, you have an autonomous robot. Could you tell me anything more about that at all?
The autonomous robot it really fills the gap, as I just said. If you live, let's say hypothetically, you're living in the suburbs of a city, but you live in a location where charging infrastructure isn't readily available to you overnight. But you go into work. Let's say, again, using that example of the NHS. Let's say you're a nurse and you go into work and you go to a hospital. You're able to go and park in a car park because there are staff car parks made available because obviously the vital nature of your work. But then we're able to charge that vehicle up, not by moving it to the source of power, but actually moving the source of power to it by using an autonomous robot that's able to go to the vehicle and actually connect with it and charge it in its location where it's parked. And obviously it's able to do that for a number of vehicles before it has to return to the mothership effectively to recharge itself, to then go and continue to do that. So you have this continuous process of somebody being able to go to work, park their car in the car park, knowing that they'll come back and the vehicle will be charged sufficiently for them to travel home and come back in, the next day. And this is the key point of it. We're all used to going to a petrol station and filling the thing up with petrol to the brim. Every time we go to the petrol station, we fill up. Nobody goes to the petrol station and goes, oh, actually, for the next 2 days, I only need 20 quid's worth of fuel.
Exactly.
So I'll just put 20 quid's worth in and do use that. Nobody does that. Everybody always fills up. So the whole point of this is that actually, once you actually know the requirement of somebody, if they're traveling 5 miles home, 5 miles back the next day, do you need to be fully charged? No, you do not. Okay, so it's really working with consumers to make sure that we are also fairly sensible about the usage of energy. Because again, if everybody charges their electric vehicles up to maximum all the time, whether they're using them or not, it's a bit of a pointless use of energy.
Oh, absolutely. So you've been involved in the car automotive space for 20, 30 years?
More than,
okay.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give other traditional, car manufacturers or automakers looking to form successful collaborations with tech or charging companies?
That's a difficult one. I mean, exactly. I think this the kind of agnostic nature of energy usage, and again that kind of culture of going to the nearest filling station is slightly problematic because you're not going to be particularly brand specific where you get your vehicle charged. You're just going to go to the latest location, and it usually tends to be motorway service stations, and you get lots of people on TikTok saying they don't work or whatever it happens to be, infrastructure being problematic. So actually coming up with a way of kind of standardizing that is extraordinarily difficult. There needs to be almost an agnostic charging process that it doesn't matter where you go, you can kind of centralize the charging aspect of it. But in terms of what would I advise OEMs to do? It's an incredibly difficult time. I mean, a lot of these car manufacturers have had it their own way for a very, very, very long time. And they've been able to produce the product they wanted. They've developed new segments and new markets. These kind of the people came up with the idea of an SUV, and then all of a sudden there was a compact SUV, there was a mid-size SUV, there was a family SUV, there was a micro SUV. I mean, all these different segments,
different SUVs for different occasions.
Yeah, and all they were doing is basically re-platforming, other cars to effectively generate more income. I get it, it's fantastic, and that's how the automotive manufacturers have done so well for such a long time. But it's changing dramatically with electrification. It really is. It's a much more it's a much more simplistic process of providing propulsion than the internal combustion engine is complex, and therefore really it's almost teaching them to dumb down. Now, one of the things that's been really interesting is actually following what the Chinese have been doing, because the Chinese initially started off being very strong on brands. And lots of Western car manufacturers started exporting cars or building cars in China, with a fantastic ready market there, then all of a sudden after a while the Chinese went, oh, hang on a second, how important is a brand? We can actually, get the cars that we want, but what we want is features. We want them to do lots and lots and lots of really funky, cool stuff. So actually what's happening now is that your consumer in China is buying based on feature rather than based on brand. And that's pushing the European manufacturers to go,
I was thinking,
where the hell do we go now?
Exactly. So I have noticed there has been a switch across brands, certainly with the younger generation. They are, as you said, they're just using it as a function rather than the traditional luxury car end.
Yeah, I mean, there's a car that's produced in China, which is a 4x4, which has a compartment above the passenger at the back, which opens and a drone takes off and flies around and looks at traffic. And it's such a cool feature to have. It's absolutely pointless, but it's such a cool feature to have that the car's sold out.
I don't know. It'd be very useful on the M25 for me. That would be great.
I mean, imagine all these drones fighting their way down the M25 to have a look at. I mean, it's rubbernecking of a new variety, isn't it?
Exactly.
See it on your screen right in front of you.
So looking forward, what are your strategic goals for the joint venture with EnSmart?
Strategic goals really is that our rollout of new product, working with you guys at EnSmart. Equally, you're rolling out your own new product and not actually new hardware which you're developing, and new software you're developing with your other partners. So it's really working closely with you, because I think obviously the collaboration between a manufacturer and an energy provider, hardware and software, is obviously a very critical strategy for us to deploy.
Nigel, thank you very much for answering the questions, and thank you for coming.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to Uninterrupted, the EnSmart Power podcast. Please do like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, request alerts, and check back regularly for new episodes. And we'll see you on the next one.